Thank you for joining the Gwinnett NAACP Meet the Candidate Forum on Solicitor General of Gwinnett County. I'll be one of your hosts today, Edward Paul, First Vice President and Political Action Committee Chair, along with me, President Poole of the Gwinnett NAACP. Just some friendly reminders before we jump into our program. Just keep in mind, early voting does start May 2nd. You can go ahead and request your absentee ballots now. We do have weekend voting in Gwinnett County this weekend, which will be May 7th and 8th, and then also May 14th and May 15th. Both of those are Saturday and Sundays, back-to-back weekends. We will have early voting, which will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So go to www.mvp.sos.ga.gov to check where your early voting polling locations are, as well as check your status. And then for now, before we get started with our program, we'll have a word from our president, President Penny Poole.
Hey, good evening, beloved community. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Thank you for spending this time with us. Your Gwinnett NAACP is here as a media vehicle for our community, bringing the news and asking the questions that you as our community want to hear. Thank you, Edward, for opening up. If we can go ahead with that opening prayer, and we will introduce the candidates slightly. We are talking to our candidates for Gwinnett County Solicitor General tonight. Edward?
All right, I'll open us up with a brief prayer. Dear Lord, as always, we ask you to protect us, keep us, watch over us, look after our friends, look after our families, and always guide this chapter and this unit to always be in your steps and order our steps in your word. As always, continue to strengthen us, keep us, give us peace, continue to give us joy, and let us, as always, continue to build and create the beloved community that Dr. King always envisioned our communities to be. And these things we ask in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And please pray to your God. Amen. Again, we thank you for coming out. We just want to do some housekeeping before we start. Maybe if we can bring our candidates up to the screen so that they can hear this housekeeping rules before we start, because they're not only for the audience, they are also for our candidates. So we want to make sure that we are all on the same page. Again, we're talking to our audience. We're thanking them for participating. We want to make sure that this is a friendly space where everyone is welcome. The candidates as well as our audience, we ask that anyone refrain from dog whistles, calling people out, any negative comments, because this is not the space. We want to be a safe space, educating and informing, and the community, the beloved community, coming together with one accord. In that, we want to go forward and introduce our candidates for this evening. If we can start with our incumbent, Brian Whiteside, for Solicitor General.
Yes, well, thank you, Penny. I'm the Solicitor General, Brian Whiteside from Gwinnett County.
And before you begin, we want to make sure that everyone is speaking for 3 minutes or less, because we want to keep this moving and give everyone the chance to have the same equal opportunity. All right. Thank you, Solicitor General. If you would introduce yourself to our audience tonight.
All right, thank you. I'm Brian Whiteside, Solicitor General of Gwinnett County. I was elected in 2018. Upon being elected, I found a variety of issues that needed to be taken care of. Number one, a Confederate monument that was in Gwinnett County. I filed a lawsuit to take that Confederate monument out. With the help of the commissioners of Gwinnett County, it was removed from Gwinnett County. Number two, I made a choice not to prosecute misdemeanor marijuana, not only due to the fact that you couldn't tell the difference between hemp and marijuana scientifically, but traditionally it had been used to stop minorities and to persecute them and arrest them without probable cause. And a number of shootings occurred on these type of incidents also. Presently, there's about 600 people who have not been prosecuted for Mr. Marijuana in Gwinnett County. And that experience I have is from being a police officer for 15 years. Also took action to protect the school board. When the school board in Gwinnett County was consistently harassed, our minority members had emails and threats, and people would not obey orders. I demanded that metal detectors and adequate police department protection be put in the school board. I've also taken issues, number one, to have a diversion program that helps each and every person. That what occurs is that people do not have crimes. For the first time in the history of Gwinnett County, we've actually done record expungements, and we did those with the NAACP, where we actually expunged people's records and gave them a second chance. We've done 3 of those at this time. That is 3 more than almost any department ever in the history of Gwinnett County. I appointed the first Black police chief in Gwinnett County, Travis Gatson. I asked Patsy Gatson to run against Danny Porter and put Danny Porter out of office. Patsy Gatson, she worked for me as an attorney. I also asked Yo Me to run in Lilburn as a council person. I also formed a network to help racial relations called United Nations 316 Gwinnett. I've consistently reached out and protected the community and stopped a super spreader by not going up in court when the numbers were so high they would endanger our community, and we had almost 60% of our people sick. Good trouble. I've taken the time and the thinking to make sure our community is safe. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And next, if we can have attorney Lisamarie Bristol, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, President Poole, and thank you to the Gwinnett NAACP for this opportunity to introduce myself to the voters and to the people of Gwinnett. My name is Lisamarie Bristol, and I am running to be the next Gwinnett Solicitor General. Thank you again for this opportunity. I am a wife of nearly 18 years, a mom of 3, a lifelong Democrat. I'm currently a senior assistant district attorney in DeKalb County. I'm an adjunct professor at Georgia State Law, and I'm very involved in the Gwinnett County community in various organizations and actually throughout Metro Atlanta in different organizations. I'm running because I'm uniquely qualified to hold this office and to bring it to the next level. The Solicitor General, for those who don't know, the primary purpose of this office is to prosecute cases in state court and recorder's court. So it's to handle cases like misdemeanors, traffic offenses, and county ordinances. On the flip side, for those unfortunate people who find themselves as victims of these crimes, this office is also responsible for ensuring that you get the resources that you need and to help you be restored and made whole. I'm actually running for this office because I actually started my career as a public defender. So I was on the other side first for several years, and I saw firsthand what a huge impact the criminal justice system may have on people's lives. I saw how a small mistake can sometimes snowball and missteps can grow like bigger and bigger and bigger, and how it can derail somebody's life. I saw that it was really easy for a prosecutor to just say, well, it's just probation, and sentence someone to years or months of probation that could easily derail their life, cause them to be jobless or homeless without a second thought. And it was a big part in the reason why I switched sides and became a prosecutor. I have experience as both a prosecutor and a public defender. On both sides, I've worked everything from traffic and code enforcement all the way through felony murder. So I've done everything as a public defender and as a prosecutor. And I know what it takes in order to make a meaningful change in someone's life. I've seen that the most effective time for us to have a meaningful intervention is when people are committing relatively nonviolent petty crimes, and that's typically handled in the Solicitor General's office, which is why I'm running for this office. I want to create more meaningful intervention and educational programs that will help address root causes for why people are committing crime and help them get back on track. These are the kinds of programs that will actually address problems in our community and help keep our community safe. The reality is the criminal justice has treated people that we are scared of the same way we treat people that we are angry at, and we can't continue to do that. We have to treat them differently, and if the way things were done before worked, it would have worked by now, and it hasn't worked. The reality is that misdemeanors, both pending misdemeanors and convictions from misdemeanors, have a major impact on people's lives. They affect access to housing, jobs, job opportunities, education, student loans. A pending misdemeanor or a misdemeanor conviction may have immigration consequences. It could even affect somebody's ability to serve in the military. So it's critical that these cases be handled efficiently, that they be handled effectively, and I'm committed to running an office that will do that. And that is a big reason why I'm running. I hope that I will be able to earn your vote today, and I look forward to answering these questions throughout the next bit of time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that. I will open up this and we'll start with you, Attorney Bristol. You started on some of these answers already, so we'll just continue this flow that you started. In your own words, what is the role of the Solicitor General and their office?
Okay. Well, the primary, thank you. Thank you, President Poole. The primary role of the Solicitor General's office is to prosecute cases in state court and recorder's court. And as I said earlier, that is primarily misdemeanors, traffic offenses, and county ordinances. Many people don't realize domestic violence cases fall under that headline. And so the most significant type of case, in my opinion, that happens in the solicitor's office are DUI cases as well as domestic violence cases. The reason why I say those are the most significant cases is domestic violence cases are really cases that if we properly interrupt those cases and put the right resources into handling those cases, we can literally save lives, because domestic violence cases lead to predictable homicides. And I know that because this is the type of work I've been doing for years. Domestic violence cases are cases like family violence battery, simple battery, cruelty to children in the third degree, stalking cases, interference with 911 calls. These are the kinds of cases that we saw spike in with COVID because people were in the homes, children were in the homes, and we didn't necessarily see what was happening behind closed doors. Domestic violence cases can be difficult and challenging because there's a lot of layers that go into them. There's a lot of family dynamics that we may not understand, and they require a different level of training and expertise to handle them. And I'm committed to ensuring that an office under my administration will have resources set aside to make sure that we are focusing on that. Some of the hardest cases that I've handled throughout my career have been domestic violence cases where we've had uncooperative victims for a variety of reasons. But these are the kinds of cases that, if handled properly, again, we are saving lives. The amount of children who are exposed to violence in the home, who then go out and repeat that violence because we don't know about it, or are later imitating it. And these are the kinds of cases that we really need to be spending our time on. Additionally, DUI cases, driving under the influence. These are cases where you don't have to know you're the person before you are the victim of this case, because anyone can be struck by a drunk driver. So again, the case law in Georgia has really shifted over the last several years on DUI case law. And so it's critically important that we are spending the time and the energy and the training and the education in these types of cases to ensure that our attorneys and our investigators are up to par and know what they are doing to make sure that we
20 seconds. 20
to make
seconds.
to make sure that we know how to handle these cases effectively, because DUI cases are a community safety issue, and they are something we want to make sure we are not dropping the ball on, because anyone can be struck by a drunk driver, and we want to ensure that we have safe communities and safe streets for everyone.
Okay, thank you. And just to help you both a little, when we get to 30 seconds, we will put up a,
That's fine.
so that I would not have to interrupt you again.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, let me ask that question to you, Solicitor General Whiteside. in your own words, what is the role of the Solicitor General and their office?
Well, Penny, I think that's a very broad question because the traditional answer would be to prosecute people, which my opponent has said, but that is not really true. The oath of office says is to seek justice. That is the oath that we take. We raise our hand before a probate judge, and it says to seek justice. Where our role is to prosecute cases also, which we do. We've prosecuted 159,000 cases in the last 3 years in Gwinnett County, even during COVID. So it's the protection of the community. We have DUI cases, we have reckless conduct cases, which also basically are people firing guns, people pointing guns at each other. We have DUI cases, we have domestics, and we have a victim advocate division that basically moves forward to make sure our victims are safe. When I first came on, Danny Porter had signed an illegal contract for $110,000 with my opponent that took $110,000 away from the Gwinnett County District Solicitor General's office, which would have hurt us protecting our victims. I successfully sued Danny Porter and took that $110,000 back. The commissioners gave me that money back. So that showed aggressive pursuit to protect our victims. And another thing about in today's environment is just not prosecuting people. That's an easy thing to do. And we successfully win almost 80% of our cases. And we've been open for the entire COVID, all 3 courts. But it's knowing to have additional protection for our community. It says to seek justice. Seek justice is what I did when I took the Confederate monument down, because we didn't feel that that had the values and the protection of our community. And we also protected our community by protecting our school board. When they became under attack, we moved forward to demand and seek justice, equal protection of those school board members where they had metal detectors and they had additional police. At one point, there were attacks on our school board. There were only 7 people there. So speaking about prosecuting people, that's one thing. Seeking justice is not having misdemeanor marijuana as a offense on someone's record. We don't allow that. And we do expungement. So we have to be more modern in our community. And as Nicole Henderson said, the crime rate has gone down in Gwinnett County. When she did her speech, our crime rate is going down, and we're in court every day except when we had a COVID spread that endangered our community. That's our role, protection of society, and looking overall, futuristically, how we can help our community to get equity.
Thank you for that. Great answers. Thank you both. Now moving on, because Attorney Bristol mentioned and touched on domestic violence. We're going to take that a little further, and we're going to ask, we're going to start with you, Solicitor General Whiteside. What is your plan for addressing, let me start that over again. According to the Georgia Commission Against Domestic Violence's 2019 report, women of color are disproportionately impacted by violence. An estimated 29.1% of African American females are victimized by intimate partner violence, which includes rape, physical assault, or stalking in their lifetime. How would you, as Solicitor General, work law enforcement to help victims of domestic violence streamline and accelerate issuance and strengthen enforcement of temporary protective orders? Because one of the things we know that people step back and after they're assaulted, sometimes refuse to go forward. So that was a lot. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Well, one of the key points I want to tell you about is, number one, our office is prevention. Number one, when we say about helping victims, my whole point, number one, is to make sure a person is not a victim. So we're basically combining with Poplar Hill Church and Hopewell Church, where we're going to have programs to make people independent. So you're not dependent financially, where a woman is not dependent financially. I'm working with Bishop Shields to have programs that a person can have vocational or educational or academic jobs and have internships and then be paid afterwards. So if a woman is independent, then she may not be stuck in that type of environment. But when we talk about of having a victim, once a person is a victim, I want to say, if you hear any background noise, I'm at the DeKalb County Airport. As you can see, the control tower. I have a group of young men and women here that I tutor every Sunday here. But the whole point is, if you're a victim, we have an active advocacy group. When those people feel that they've been harmed and we get those reports, our advocates reach out to them and they make a bond with these people and they try to find out what they can do to help them. The first question you always ask is, how can I help you? And we try to find a secure area for them to be in. Try to find an income producing area for them. That's one of our jets taking off here. And the whole point about that, number one, is to try to put them in a safe environment. We work with different agencies to make sure these people are safe. As a former police officer, I know about those temporary violence orders. Number one, it's hard to enforce them because they are a piece of paper. So what you want to do is put that person in a position of safety. I've worked with extended stay hotels and other hotels to basically secretly have places for people to stay. I made the extended stay hotels treat single mothers and fathers and families in an equal and good way to make sure they were safe, and have a relationship with some hotels where people can get reduced rates confidentially reduced rates so they can have a place to stay. So that we try to make it sure they're safe, and we try to explain the implications. A lot of people try to dismiss these issues, but we try to tell you, if he hits you once, most likely he's going to hit you again. And so what happens with defendants, we also seek counseling for them, because a lot of people are under pressure, but we can't have our minority women or any woman beaten and hit. So we want to try to help that defendant, but you have to put that victim primary and make her aware that this is your life. And it's really bad when a child witnesses this also. So you don't want that child to take on the attitude that this is a way of life. So we try to bring the child in for counseling also, if we can. But we offer counseling, but we're very, very strict on a second offense. We usually offer for a second offense, we're asking for jail time if it's a second time. If you have the second victim, or that defendant has had multiple women he's attacked, and you find a lot of times that these defendants, it might be one time with that one lady, but it may be 3 or 4 times.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, and it was a long question. Let me read that for you, please, Attorney Bristol. Are you good?
I'm good. Thank you, President Poole.
Okay. Go ahead.
So from what I understand, the question was about streamlining the TPO process. So a couple of key things I want to make sure we talk about. Whether or not a woman is financially dependent or independent or anything is really goes towards victim shaming, and that has no place here. What we do know about domestic violence is that it goes across socioeconomic lines. We know that women, yes, it disproportionately affects women of color, but we know that victims of domestic violence span across multiple economic brackets, right? So what we're not going to do is talk about whether or not a woman is financially independent or not, and whether or not that goes towards whether or not she's the victim of domestic violence, because that tends towards blaming the victim. Also, what we do know is that the most dangerous time for a victim of domestic violence is right after she leaves her abuser. That is the most vulnerable time for victims of domestic violence. And there are several reasons why victims of domestic violence return to their abusers. And again, as I pointed out in my opening comments, it's a very nuanced area. What is key in this area is that we handle these cases with compassion, with dignity, and with respect, and that it's timely. So it's important that TPOs are handled in a timely manner immediately when the arrest happens. And that will require partnership with the magistrate court, which helps to issue these TPOs, and that there is immediate resources placed for the victims, whether they're male or female. We do have several organizations throughout Gwinnett County and surrounding counties that would allow for families and survivors of domestic violence to have immediate resources, which is critically important. And I'm committed to building up those partnerships to ensure that we have quick access to those. We have partnerships to ensure that people don't have to be scrambling at the last moment. But the reality is time is of the essence when it comes to these cases. I also want to address the fact that a violation of a TPO, if the attacker, if the abuser recontacts the person who's the subject of that TPO, that's actually a felony. That is actually a felony offense. And when they do that, it's not a second misdemeanor. Additionally, if there is someone who is committed and convicted of a family violence battery, who then commits a second family violence battery, that second family violence battery is actually a 5-year felony. It is no longer a misdemeanor. So when I say these cases are critically important, and it is critically important that we are handling them well, and that we have the right training, and that we have the right people in place to handle them, this is what I'm talking about, because there is so much on the line with these cases. And as I've said, children are present in these cases, children are present in these homes, and we need to make sure that we have the right people in place to ensure that we are doing everything in our power to do what's right for these victims.
Thank you for that. And I think that each time it may be better if we repeat these questions, because we want to make sure you get all the nuances in. I want to just make clear that in this space we speak and try to combat things that happen in our African American and Black community. So a lot of those questions are centered toward that because no one else is asking those questions. So a lot of times we will be geared specifically toward our communities. So I'm going to make sure I re-ask them each time. And tell us what a TPO is, the acronyms you were using.
Temporary protective order. It's a temporary protective order. I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's okay. You have to remember, we may not understand as you do. So, and I didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking. So the temporary protective orders. Thank you so much for that. Okay, let's moving on to our next question. Let's go to a little different position, because I know that Solicitor General Brian Whiteside may have addressed it, but we need you both to clearly state your position on the decriminalization of marijuana here in Gwinnett County. So this time we'll start with you, Attorney Bristol. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we are definitely seeing a national trend towards the decriminalization of marijuana, and I think our police officers do have better things to use their resources towards, and I support that. I would like to see us take it a step further, though. I'd like to see us working as solicitor. I will work with our commissioners and with our local police departments and agencies to actually put a decriminalization ordinance on the books. So rather than have this informal out there, I would like to see something on books so everyone is on the same page, because I think open communication is key. And so whatever it takes to get to the table, whoever it takes to bring to the table, I'm committed to doing that work with our commissioners, with Chief McClure, and with our local police chiefs at all of our different municipalities to get a decriminalization ordinance on the books, because that definitely needs to happen for personal possession of marijuana. It is still illegal across the state, but that is not something I can affect. But as Solicitor General, I do support, I would still follow the policy of not prosecuting small use marijuana. I just want to take it a step further and work with our law enforcement agencies to actually put something in writing on the books.
Thank you for that. Because as you know, the current Board of Commissioners have had this on stall, and have been refusing to answer this question. So to you, Solicitor General Whiteside, let me read this same question to you. What is your position on the decriminalization of marijuana in Gwinnett County?
Well, I think my position is pretty clear. I think I was the first Solicitor General in Gwinnett County to not, or in the country, not to basically prosecute marijuana once the new hemp law came out, because you couldn't tell the difference between marijuana and hemp scientifically. They didn't have a testing machine there. And now the GBI doesn't really test misdemeanor marijuana. So we're still on the same book that we were before. We're working on almost 4 years where we're doing the same policy. We dismissed those cases. And we actually work with the police department and have basically emailed the police department and all police departments in Gwinnett County that we don't enforce that rule. And I served with J.D. McClure when I was a deputy. And we have complete cooperation with the police department with that. So I can only say it's a short answer. When I started basically not prosecuting marijuana, I continue not to prosecute marijuana. That gives a person a second chance at life, because what usually happens, people have these drug records on their profiles or their backgrounds. They can't get a job, and they cannot also, join the military. And so we've eliminated that and put people back to work and given them second chances. So the whole point about it, we're not ever going to enforce that rule in prosecuting people for misdemeanor marijuana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Edward, I see you're back in. Do we have any questions in the chat?
No questions. We did have a comment from John Cox, who said, yes, please be clear on decriminalizing marijuana, no ambiguity or officer discretion. So
Okay.
no questions as of yet. I did drop a link in the chat just so people can understand how to tailor their questions, because Solicitor General is a position that most people may not be familiar with what the scope of what they cover. So I did put a link in the chat for you all to look at that. That way y'all can know how to tailor your questions.
Something when you talk about that, we talk about no officer discretion. Can I address that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, what's going to probably happen, see, when people talk about decriminalizing marijuana, what happens, let's say you put an ordinance in the book. Now, you may have an ordinance that basically that is going to state that it's not a criminal act, but the state law is still in effect. So when you talk about officer discretion, I think it's going to be still legal for an officer to do that, to make that arrest, but we would not prosecute that in that regard. So here we go with another jet out here where we're doing our class. But the whole point about it, I think an officer would be able to make that arrest or with probable cause, supposedly. But what I'm trying to tell you, what we do in Gwinnett, the first thing about it, how do you have probable cause when you can't prove it? See, this is what I try to tell the police. Okay, you're going to try to bring something in, a green leafy substance, but scientifically, the GBI doesn't want to give us a test. So here we go again with seeking justice, our oath. You can't legally prosecute these things when you don't have a test. So in Gwinnett, we're not going to do that. But an officer probably can, even if you do this, what you say decriminalization, who's going to order the police not to use by law, they can make these arrests. But I have to say the safeguard is that we have these relationships that we dismiss these, and we have a great relationship with our judges. They actually sign the dismissal. We say we're going to do a no proc, but our judges, they actually sign them. And I respect our judges. They sign the dismissal, the no proc forms. So you got a great relationship with the judges and the solicitor, where the judges, if they wanted to, they don't have to sign these forms. But you have to thank your judges for what they do. They're actually signing these forms and dismissing. And they're showing a lot of equity out here. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Miss Attorney Bristol, would you like to also get an opportunity to expound on what that current situation is in Gwinnett County? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it was kind of based off of the comment about there being discretion, and there's always going to be officer discretion, just like there's always prosecutorial discretion. So that's hard to speak to because it's really speculation. There's always a variety of scenarios. So I think it's better not to go into the rabbit hole of different. My position, I think, is fairly clear. I agree that we do not need to be prosecuting personal use marijuana. I do agree. I know that the half of the commission board has been working towards a decriminalization ordinance. I would support and get to the table with them along with our law enforcement agencies to work on that as well, because I think that's helpful. I know cities like Clarkston has had that on the books for years. I think that would be helpful. More communication is better than not. Less ambiguity is better than not. And that's what I would work towards, because there's more order that way. Because the reality is the state law is the state law. But if we as Gwinnett County and Gwinnett County leadership can come together and agree on what we're going to do here, I think that's better for everyone. If we can all agree what we're all doing here and we're not leaving it to some ambiguous how somebody's feeling that day. So that's what I'm committed to doing, is getting us to the table and making sure that we're all on the same page, because I don't want this to be left up to somebody's good day or bad day and it having a different outcome. So I think it's very important that we are clear about the intent, and I'm committed to working on that from day one to make sure that there's consistency, because that's what our citizens deserve.
Okay. Thank you for that rebuttal. All right. And let's move on to our next question. And we touched on a little bit about, about people who are being abused, about we want to open up this door going to our young people, talking about these biases and how we know that in Gwinnett County especially, that the African American and Black population are leading, and those who are being prosecuted for crimes in the school to prison pipeline. And our next question: in what ways will you use? Will you use? Will you have used your role as Solicitor General to stop the school to prison pipeline, where we see young Black people build a misdemeanor record at a young age because they're being over disciplined at school and are tried in the courts as adults? Solicitor General Whiteside, that question is for you. If you would please start.
Well, the big thing about that, number one, is education, giving opportunities, and basically making sure people know life skills. And I'm at the airport right now. I can show you. I'm at the airport right now here in DeKalb, and we're doing a program with approximately 20 to 25 young men and women, where we try to show them life skills. We try to show them a different type of way to settle issues and to basically provide empathy.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
That was my time for going on.
We try to provide the impetus, number one, life skills, how to avoid confrontation, study habits, study skills, to put people in a position, number one, where they may be able to not have these type of issues with the school to prison pipeline. Number two, we also include the family. I work personally with families. When you're having some type of schooling or skill environment, you have to involve the family. So those are one of the things that we're doing now. But I go back to the fact we're also reaching out that people can be paid well. When a person is paid well, that gives them more opportunities. We're having vocational programs, educational programs, and working with tutoring. One good thing about Dennis and Pastor Head, they have a new facility over at Poplar Hill in Beaufort that we have toured, and we plan on moving forward with that to help educate people on that side of town, and then give educational opportunities and life skills to people at Hopewell. But I have been doing these programs over 20 years with our first Black police chief, Travis Gatson, where we called it Midnight Basketball. You play with the kids, you do life skills, and then you do scenarios also. Travis Gatson did that for a long time. We're also trying to bring that back. But the big thing is life skills, education, having different type of involvement with young people, men and women, and showing them opportunities. And I think that this has worked. I've had a great deal of people, at least 6 people who are playing pro football. I have people who are now pilots in the United States military, and I have young people who are actually like second and third in command in regard to Navy attack weapons ships. So I've had a successful program, and we want to expand that with the Solicitor General's office. For the first time, I now have an outreach person. They should be coming on, in about a week or 2. We couldn't get them on during COVID, and we're going to have another outreach person. And we've been working sincerely with Bishop Shields. And when this COVID, I guess, is finally breaking, and Pastor Head, we are going to be well funded to try to get people in those, I guess, the buildings and institutions that they have. So thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
And Attorney Bristol, and let me read that for you. We talked about how our numbers are soaring in other places when it comes to being criminalized. In what ways will you use or have you used your role, excuse me, in what ways will you use your role as Solicitor General to stop the school to prison pipeline where we see young Black people build misdemeanor records at a young age because they're being over disciplined in school and are tried in courts like adults? Attorney Bristol, please.
Thank you for the question. Well, I think it's important that we understand first and foremost that if they are under 17, they would not be handled in the Solicitor General's office. So if accused of a crime and they are under 17, they would actually be handled in juvenile court. The Solicitor General's office would not have jurisdiction over juveniles. But if 17 or older, yes, their cases would be handled in the solicitor's office. Now, what I have traditionally done in my years as a prosecutor on both sides is I'm intentional about my cases. And if any defendant has come in front of me and is eligible for a diversion program, is eligible for an alternative resolution, that is something I've always been very committed to. And that means, for those who may not know, a diversion program or an alternative resolution is where instead of prosecuting, they can go through an alternative supervision program, where they can do community service, they can do some kind of treatment program if necessary. Maybe substance abuse is the problem. Maybe they need to get their GED, whatever it is, and some form of supervision. And if they successfully complete the terms of that program, then the arrest will be expunged from their record. This is something instead of a first offender program, so that they can maintain a clean record without getting a first offender strike against them. That is something I would like to see grown even stronger under my administration in the solicitor's office. Outside of that, I have been involved in several community organizations. I'm currently the president of the Greater Atlanta Black Prosecutors Association, and I've been a part of the executive board since 2017. In that capacity, we have done several programs, part of the Youth Outreach Council, the Community Service Chair. I was the VP of Programs. And we do different programs where we go to different schools, middle schools and high schools, sometimes even elementary schools. And I think it's very important that our young people understand how their actions may intersect with the criminal justice system. And that's been a big part, educating them not just on what their options are, but on what consequences their behaviors may have. So I've spent a lot of time through my church, through my different organizations, just educating young people so they understand the ramifications of even getting a ride from their friend and understanding what parties to a crime are, and how that law could affect their lives. Because a lot of time what I'm finding is young people don't necessarily understand the potential impact of their behavior or choices that they're making and how it could derail their lives. So sometimes having those conversations with young people, having these conversations at a church youth group, having these conversations going into a middle school and educating them, cyber safety, the importance of all of these different things. Our young people are really exposed to a lot these days. I think we need to be intentional educating them and being involved in their lives before it.
All right. All right. Thank you, Attorney Bristol, for that. We're going to break up the questions from our members in our chapter and go to some that we've gotten in the chat now. We have Tiffany Janelle Britt. Her question is, how important is Solicitor General role in working effectively with state court judges, and what steps can be taken to avoid another contempt? So Attorney Bristol, will allow you to go first, and then Mr. Whiteside. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think working effectively with our state court judges and our recorder's court judges is incredibly important. Those are basically your primary partners in moving efficiently. And I think that as Solicitor General, you need to have a really strong relationship to work with your judges, because those are your partners. And I think what we need to make sure we have are good, solid working relationships. And that is something I'm committed to doing with the entire bench, with all 6 state court judges, as well as all 3 recorder's court judges. We need to get back to the business of opening up all the courts and having all the judges hear as many cases as possible. COVID has put a huge damper on the criminal justice system. And unfortunately, while the whole world shut down because of this virus, crime kept going. And I know that because in my current role, I see it every single day. And what we need to do is we need to find a way to dig our way out of this hole. And we need to do that in a way that doesn't violate people's due process. And we need to do it in a way that still keeps victims safe and gives them the opportunity to be heard in court and be made whole as well. So I think it's very important to have a respectful and effective working relationship with our state court judges, because you need to know that I can pick up the phone and call and they'll answer, and vice versa, and that we can come to the table and work together and find a compromise and find a solution without it getting heated and without it getting to the point where we're breaking down and we're not communicating. Because as leaders, we may not always agree, but we need to be able to come to the table and figure something out and figure some sort of compromise out, because that's what the county deserves in their elected leaders. The county deserves leadership that will see past their own personal issues and will sit down at the table and do what's in the best interest of the entire county. Gwinnett has nearly 1 million people in it. We are the most diverse county in the state. We are the most diverse region in county in the whole Southeast region of this country. Our leadership is finally reflecting that. So of course, we're going to have differing opinions at the table. We need to be able to sit at that table in spite of our differences and still come up with solutions that will work for everyone. And I'm committed to doing that from day one.
All right, thank you for that. And same question to you, Solicitor General Whiteside.
But first of all, we have a great relationship with our court. And when people talk about contempt, we have to make that very clear. That contempt was because of COVID. We had over 40% of our people, to 33 to 40% of our people that were sick approximately a week and a half before a Monday, where I made the decision to close our office, which then closed the courts. What happened there is that we had people who actually would have been in that courtroom and infected people. We had people who were asymptomatic that were in close quarters. Our chief of police, Travis Gatson, he's given me permission to speak on his behalf. He actually caught COVID, and during the week that courtroom was closed, he would have patrolled that courtroom and probably infected people. We had another person that also got sick, and under CDC guidelines, we can't say who, but we had at least 2 people. If they would have been in that courtroom, they would have infected the community. They had people on the judge's staff that all were also infected. We asked that we did not have court that week. I emailed the commissioners, I emailed the judges and told people that we could not provide security. We actually provide security through our investigators for the court. They were sick. So what happened was, number one, I stopped the super spreader. Number two, we do 150 some thousand cases. That was one day. So when you hear about people, we've done 3 expungements, one with the NAACP, and that's 3 more than my opponent did in the years she was with Danny Porter, and she worked for Danny Porter. So we have been open 115,000 cases, and I invite anybody to file an Open Records Act. 4 months ago, we only had a backlog of 1,500 cases. Okay, that's 1,500 over 4 months ago, and the courts have been open since that. And we've been winning DUI cases and domestic violence cases. So when you talk about cooperation, all you have to do is pull the files, and you see the judges signing those cases every day, signing the marijuana no process, signing the guilty pleas, signing each and every other thing. I did good trouble. If I would have opened that court, you would have had a super spreader. They wanted that court to be open with approximately 200 and some people without a mask mandate. The Friday after I closed court, they've had a mask mandate. They put a mask mandate in effect on Friday. I had asked for help that we would not open that court. But on Friday, a mask mandate came into effect after I took action. That's what John Lewis and everyone calls good trouble. Protecting minority women who would have come up there and minority men who would have been up there and infected them. And if people miss work, then they don't pay their rent. I took all that into my thought process. If you miss 1 or 2 days, pay your rent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. And staying along those lines, and I'll let you start first, Solicitor Whiteside, since you're on that subject. We had a question from one of our members. What is your plan for addressing the backlog of cases? You on mute.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I muted myself. I'm sorry. The Jets are out here. My kids are out here. Well, I call them my kids, but they're somebody else's kids, and their parents are out here playing. Because that's when I want to go back and say you have to involve your family with these type of programs. But when you say a backlog of cases, when you have a backlog of cases, what usually is you basically work harder. I've hired more people than ever before in the solicitor's office. And when you say a backlog of cases, the big thing is we have an investigative unit that dismisses most of those cases because a lot of times people are arrested falsely. James McKinney is our assistant chief of police. I served with him as a cop. I was a street cop. I was a deputy. I know how to take care of these cases. We can look at those cases in 5 seconds and say they're written bad, no probable cause. So what the first thing you do, you work with the police department and say, make good arrests, make good reports. And right now we have the lowest backlog in the metro area. My opponent with Sherry Boston, there's an article in the paper. They have a 7-year backlog. So what I tell people is come and file an Open Records Act. And within 3 days, we have to answer that and come and look at the files, see all the judges signing everything. So with our backlog, we don't have a big backlog. Approximately 4 or 5 months ago, an attorney filed a Open Records Act, and she basically is a supporter of my opponent, and it showed miraculously only had 1,500 cases after 3 years of being supposedly closed, but we have been open in recorder's court. We have been open in jail court. In jail court, we actually give people bonds, signature bonds, if they aren't violent. And in state court, we work to make bonds also. So I just say, if you think we have a backlog, come on Monday, file an open records report, and in 3 days, you can see how many cases we have. By law, you have to have that report back in 3 days. And I invite each and every person to come and watch court. If you think we're not open, court is open every day. You can walk in there and see our attorneys, who 70% of them are former defense attorneys. They're doing cases every day. And look how they win these domestic violence cases. Look how they protect the witnesses. Our investigators pick these people up. That stops backlogs by working and caring and giving some love to your people who are victims and to the police department, and giving love to your judges. I respect all the judges. I worked with most of them as a private attorney. So when you say a backlog, come and file an open records action, people, please. And then we have to, by law, give you our numbers. And then I say, file an open records action in DeKalb County where my opponent works and see how many they have. Thank you very much.
All right. Same question to you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
All right. So let me pull it back up here. First of all, let me get you on the screen. There we go. It says, what is your plan for addressing the backlog of cases? So apparently some of our members think there's a pretty good backlog in Gwinnett. I'm sure there's some around the county due to COVID and things of that nature, and just cases that got backed up from 2020 and 2021 that's still carrying over. So what would be your plan if elected as Solicitor General to basically address that issue?
Great. Thank you very much for the question. So I will say there is a backlog. And despite what my opponent wants the audience to believe, I was in the Gwinnett DA's office when COVID hit. I was a senior ADA at the time, and I was present when his office closed and the doors were shut and calls were not returned and everything shut down. I was in the middle of trying a murder case when COVID hit and shut the country down. And so I saw firsthand their office disappear. And I know that for nearly 2 years, jury trials didn't happen in that office. And unfortunately, when jury trials don't happen, cases don't get resolved. And so there is a backlog, because the reality is when jury trial calendars were called in throughout the last summer when numbers were down and the district attorney's office was in fact having trials, the solicitor's office was not. And we know that it was safe to have jury trials because DA Austin Gatson's office was conducting jury trials where they needed 12 to 14 jurors, and the solicitor's office was failing to do so, and they only needed 6 jurors. And they had the same square footage to work with. So they needed half as many people, and yet were unable to facilitate having jury trials. And that's a problem. So if serious violent felonies were able to be brought forward safely in that space and have trial, the solicitor office failed to do so and missed several meaningful opportunities to have trials, which contributed to the backlog. One case in particular that has failed to be heard was one case that was dismissed by the court. And the court said in that case in particular that due to the 3-year, 6-month, and 3-week delay caused by my opponent's office, the case would be dismissed. It was a constitutional speedy violation, and that's a problem. So to answer the question, what I would do in this office to address the backlog, I would ensure that we are at work every day, answering the phone, going to court, addressing cases, filing charges. Because really and truly, that's what needs to happen. Now, the allegations against my current employer are unfounded, and I won't bother to go into that because one, what's going on in DeKalb County misstated by my opponent for one, and also wholly irrelevant to what's happening in the Gwinnett Solicitor's office. And two, again, just completely incorrect. The backlog needs to be addressed. Cases need to be filed. Cases need to be handled. 90 cases were removed from Recorder's Court the week of trial due to the lawsuit against the Recorder's Court judges. That's 90 cases that were prepared, ready to go and be resolved that were removed due to the lawsuit filed by my opponent against the 3 Recorder's Court judges. Those are cases that could have been resolved that are now sitting on a docket that have not been handled.
All right, thank you for that. We're in the home stretch now of our program, and so we got a few more minutes left. I'm not going to try to rush. Go ahead.
I'll address something. I'd like to address something.
Yeah, hold on. We want to, there were statements that were going back and forth. Let's get rebuttals on this. We just don't want to walk away with everything up in the air.
Will that be a two-way street, President Poole? I just want to be sure because I let the other one go. I just want to be clear.
So, Attorney Bristol, we let everyone know that this is equal opportunity. So I'm not understanding why we would give one candidate a leeway and not give you leeway.
And we're gonna limit the responses to 60
Two,
seconds because we
well,
still
two
got more
minutes
questions.
instead of 3. 2 minutes, Edward. Go
Okay.
ahead, Attorney
Okay,
Solicitor
give me
General.
seconds. I got a jet right here coming behind us, private jet. But let me respond to something about the recorder's court. And let me make it perfectly clear. When you talk about suing people, number one, the recorder's court judges refuse to transfer cases over to the state court. And why were they sued is because, number one, there is no court reporter in the recorder's court. That means you have no one taking a record in reporter's court. It is unfair to a citizen to not have somebody to make an accurate record to show what is occurring in a courtroom. In a DUI case, I asked that they be transferred to the state court. The ordinances of Gwinnett County and the laws of Gwinnett County specifically stated that the cases should be transferred over. I sued and I won. The judges were wrong because if you come into court, there needs to be a record to make sure we don't make a mistake. The judges don't make a mistake. You might want to appeal that case. If the judges would have simply read the law, they would have transferred those cases over to state court. You should not come into a courtroom and not have a transcript. That is how I give my citizens the love. I want to protect you. If we make a mistake, I want to move forward and make sure you get a good case. Number two, the judges, if they would have transferred the cases as the law said, now we won that case. The Judge Ronnie Batchelor in Superior Court said we were right, the judges were wrong, that the citizens basically were not treated fairly. Citizens were not treated fairly because they deserve to have a record. Remember, just a second. Remember, when Mr. Floyd was attacked, the only thing that saved him was a video. So your actual symbolic video is a transcript. Thank you very much.
Okay,
All right.
Attorney Bristol, if you would go ahead. And
Just
first
one-
of all, let me ask one question that was not clear to me on this exchange. Where do you currently work? Because that was mentioned.
Oh, sure. I am a senior assistant district attorney in DeKalb County.
Okay. All right. So if you would like to give rebuttal, go ahead.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Thank you. So I will say, I guess the most pressing one is Recorder's Court is a court of record, and there are other options for it becoming a court of record, because it is a court of record, and it's under OCGA 5-4-11 and 12 as to what the proper procedure is, because it's been around for years and years and years, and there are other jurisdictions that use it as well. Be that as it may, those 90 cases were removed the day of trial. Those cases were ultimately removed from a court that was open and functioning and able to have bench trials and removed to a court that is not having trials at the moment, or just recently started up having trials. And so that is a problem. That is delaying those DUI trials, that is delaying further cases and adding more pressure to the state court bench. Furthermore, that is not protecting the citizens, that is not helping our backlog, that is not helping our community at all. That is adding more strain to the system that need not happen. And that is a problem, and that does not resolve anything. The reality is we as leaders need to be able to sit down and get things done. And we can do things without suing each other. We can do things by having conversations. And it is my understanding that other solutions were offered, like having a court reporter come to Recorder's Court, and that was refused by the solicitor. Having a court reporter sit in the Recorder's Court courtroom would have been perfectly helpful and would have appeased all of if the recording wouldn't have been enough for him. And instead, what happened is 90 cases were removed. And while our judges are barred from commenting on things because of the judicial rules, it's unfair because he gets a free way to say whatever he wants about our judicial bench and they can't respond. But that's just not accurate.
Penny.
Okay, and I would like to take let's take a breath right here. The election that's going to occur on May 24th, it is a primary election. However, there is no Republican opponent in this race. So whoever is elected with a clear majority will be the Solicitor General for Gwinnett County. So we want to make that clear. There is no Republican opponent in this race. And that on May 24th, we will be electing one of these two people, our Solicitor General in Gwinnett County. Edward, are there any other questions, or was that satisfactorily handled? We're going to move on.
Yeah. And since we're in the home stretch and toward the back end of the program, we're going to try to limit the answers to 2 minutes now, because we do got a couple of more questions to get to before we let y'all make y'all closing remarks on the program. And I don't see any questions in the chat so far, so I'll just jump in with the next question that we have. It says, in what ways, and I guess Attorney Bristol, you can start us off first. In what ways can the Solicitor General protect Gwinnett residents from landlord or even hotel owners who violate county ordinance with inhumane living conditions?
That's a great question. Thank you very much for that. In my current capacity in the Crime Strategies and Community Partnerships Unit, I sit on a task force. I think it's incredibly important that we have a strong relationship with our code enforcement agency. I think what needs to happen is citizens need to know, tenants in particular need to know their rights. They need to understand what their options are when it comes to landlord-tenant issues. And they also need to understand where they can go for recourse when they have issues. They need to know who they can complain to when there are issues with that. And I think that also requires some partnership with the magistrate court. Our chief magistrate court judge, Christina Bloom, prides herself in being a very accessible court of the people. And she prides herself in, they're open 24 hours a day. And I think that is something that being able to properly direct people to that resource would be very helpful so that they understand where they can go for help. The solicitor's office would be responsible for prosecuting cases if the landlords were ultimately cited for any of those issues, and it definitely would hold them absolutely accountable for any infractions, and would work with code enforcement to not just cite them, but to stay on top of them to make sure that they brought their sites up to code, which is what's important. I think what needs to happen there is that you stay on top of them and that you go back and hold them accountable, because our citizens deserve to have somewhere safe and clean and habitable to live.
Thank you. Solicitor General Whiteside, she actually beat the time. I'll read the question again. It says, in what ways can the Solicitor General protect Gwinnett residents from landlord? And the reason we got the hotel owners in there, because we know a lot of residents, unfortunately, have been forced into a lot of these extended stays due to the rise in housing costs in Gwinnett County. But I'll keep going with the question. It says, in what ways can Solicitor General protect Gwinnett residents from landlords or hotel owners who violate county ordinance with inhumane living conditions?
Well, number one is to enforce those ordinances. But the most important thing, if you look in Google, Solicitor General Brian Whiteside, extended stay hotels, immediately upon coming into office, I did a statistical study, a mathematical study of which hotels had the most crime and which hotels had the most complaints. At that point, that was done by Curtis Clements. He was one of our investigators at the time. He now works for Patsy Austin Gatson. We found that some hotels had 30 years of crime and basically ordinance violations. We moved forward and issued a notice to them that we would basically close them and relocate the people to different and better environments unless they came into compliance. For the first time in the history in the country of the United States, there was a meeting with almost 15 people, 15 of these owners, and they came into compliance immediately. So the question is, number one, is what will we do? We've already done that, and we're doing it each and every day. We also patrol those extended stay hotels. I have personally been driven out there by my investigators or drive my own cars to check on the outside areas. And then we actually speak to the residents and the owner of those extended stays. We took immediate action with those extended stays, and basically some of them have increased security and done better environmental construction inside. So the big thing is to make sure the ordinances are in place, but take immediate action. So we have taken immediate action. I tell people, Google Brian Whiteside extended stay hotels, where we made people come into compliance. And also the big thing, we're also working for affordable housing with Shahar Hussain. He is actually building affordable housing to help people be able to move. So we're actually working with other components in the community to provide affordable housing. So we don't talk about prosecuting all the time. We talk about being futuristic. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next question, and Solicitor Whiteside, if you had to go off screen, that's fine. I'll turn it over. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
All right. So yes, so I'll let you start this question. It says, we know Black communities and other non-white communities are subjected to some of the worst conditions in terms of pollution. In what ways will you, or in your case, have you, as your position as Solicitor General, protect these communities, particularly businesses and corporations, from dumping waste in those communities?
Well, once again, let me talk about those issues because I took a strong stance against Waste Pro. In the community, basically, garbage wasn't being picked up for over a month. And we actually wrote Waste Pro a letter that demanded that they come into compliance and asked that they have a meeting with us. And we had a meeting with the community in one of Lil Burns parks, and then basically asked Waste Pro to come once again into compliance. And what happened there, they basically began to pick up the garbage and be on time. We also had a problem with our dollar stores where they had multiple garbage outside of their dollar stores and inside was not clean. We wrote letters to your dollar stores, especially out in Centerview, what they call the promised land, where they had continuous garbage and mattresses and other big items out there. Went over there personally. Most of the time I am going over personally, talk to the manager, but it's not always the manager, it's the corporation. And we worked with that corporation to clean those issues up, and the store working on that, because people who can't dump their things at the Goodwill, they go out at night and dump them at the dollar store. So we actually have moved forward to ask the law enforcement personnel to maybe have undercover cars out there to cite these people, because I've been out there and seen rodents and bugs, and basically we want to clean Gwinnett. And so what we do is seek equity. We don't basically accept people living in extended stays being treated any differently than a $800,000 house. So each and every time there's a complaint, I usually go out there personally and I go out with my investigators, and then we write letters to these communities, and we always try to negotiate first, but if we need to take action, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor General Whiteside. And same question to you, Attorney Bristol. We know that Black communities and other non-white communities are subjected to the worst condition in terms of pollution. In what ways will you use the Solicitor General office to protect these communities from businesses or corporations that dump waste in our communities?
Okay. So I don't disagree that this is a problem, and I don't disagree that it is a problem that needs to be addressed. However, that being said, I do firmly agree that everyone has, we need to understand that we have commissioners, and we have city council people, and everyone has their role to play. And I do agree that we do need a clean and beautiful Gwinnett, and I want to live in a clean and beautiful Gwinnett, and I'm grateful for that. However, the role of the Solicitor General is primarily to handle the prosecution and to handle the cases in state court and recorder's court. And so while I don't disagree that we don't want illegal dumping, we don't want people just to do whatever they want at these places, I don't disagree with that. The role of the Solicitor General is not to act as code enforcement, nor is it to act as a county commissioner, nor is it to act as the person to chastise Waste Pro, nor is it to act as the person to ambush the garbage collection people. We do have county commissioners who are elected and tasked to handle certain things as well. And so respectfully, I would work with those people who with our other electeds, and I would handle the cases that are brought to the office within my jurisdiction. But I think it's also important that we keep in mind that as electeds, we all have a role to play. And if we step too far outside of our lane, that leaves the lane that we're supposed to be occupying unfulfilled. And so again, I can't stress enough, I don't disagree. We can all agree that we want a clean Gwinnett. We can all agree that there are things that we all want to see happen. But we also know that everyone can't do everything. And I respectfully would just say that I'm solidly committed to ensuring that the office that I'm seeking is run effectively and efficiently, and that cases are handled well and fairly, and that young people are not saddled with criminal histories that they don't need to be saddled with, and that we're running robust programs for them. But riding out to task Waste Pro and do these things is not the role of the Solicitor General. So that's my response to that.
Okay. And just so we clear, yeah, we're not asking, you to do anything outside the scope, but just to prosecute, because we've seen a lot of times, a lot of these big corporations and businesses, people, they don't get prosecuted, until they're sued, 20 years later after the residents. And, we look at what happened in Flint, Michigan with the water there, cases like that. So that's what when we're saying in terms of your role, if you were elected Solicitor General, how would you handle and prosecute these cases and hold these people accountable for dumping waste, for putting lead in our water? Because we've seen this happen across the country.
And just to be clear, a lot of these cases, prosecution even of these cases, would come under the purview of the Attorney General's office and of state agencies. These are somewhat outside the scope of what we're talking about. Now, code enforcement cases, 100%. And as I said at the very beginning, code enforcement cases, yes. I would prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law, corporate or private, 100%. But some of the larger corporation cases that we're talking about at this point, those are often under the, would come under the purview of something that the Attorney General's office would likely step in with, and larger state agencies would be involved with, because they have the manpower and they have the resources to kind of take on these corporate entities at these, because think about it, you're taking on Dollar General, that's a corporate entity. Right. And so when you're taking on a larger entity, you generally have a larger state agency that's going to take that on. And so I just want to be clear and be very clear about the expectations, because I also don't want to overpromise something that the office may not have the resources to actually handle.
Better, you tell them to come into compliance. Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay, let me respond to that, because see, this is what we're talking about. To elect my opponent would be going back to the old guard. First, you need to know the law. When Dollar General and Waste Pro did not clean the areas for garbage in a minority county, what we can do is we classify that as a public nuisance. It is a health hazard. That is under the Solicitor General. And when we talk about that, the first thing, if you're going to be Solicitor General, know the law. We will pull the case come tomorrow. We won against Dollar General. Okay, they cited them. Our recorder's court, who we cooperate judges, the head judge fined them and has fined them 3 or 4 times because they don't clean up. When you walk in some of these dollar stores, they don't even mop the floor. That's a lack of respect for our citizens. Go into some of the dollar stores on Highway 29. I have walked in there personally and said, can you please clean the floors? We have children that walk in here. Okay, now that's not being mean. We actually sent a letter. We're not shaming anybody or bullying anybody. If you have garbage outside, that garbage was by children's bus stops. I walked out there personally and saw bugs and cat eating garbage. I will not have our children treated like that. All we had to do was write a letter. It is a public nuisance to have garbage. And the proof is in the pudding. We have the citations, and I tell each and every person, tomorrow I will have 200 sheets of open records. Come and do an Open Records Act. We will give you the record that shows that Dollar General was found guilty. These people were found guilty on these cases, okay? And Waste Pro, we didn't have to write them up because, number one, they came into compliance. We always write people a letter beforehand. We wrote the Recorder's Court judges and asked them to trade the cases. They were offered to be state court judges, and we offered to, basically have a court reporter in there. They said they weren't going to transfer them. So when you hire me, see, you're my boss. This is what I say. You're my boss. Don't you want to create an environment? Thank you.
All right.
May
Thank
I
you for that.
respond?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm only going to respond briefly to one thing because it's been brought up several times. My opponent keeps alleging that I have filed some sort of open records request against his office. And I just need to be perfectly clear. I've not filed any open records requests against him or his office. And the allegations that I have some kind of insidious file against him is completely false. Now, granted, we as citizens all have power, as you're saying, to demand that the stores that we shop in, the communities that we frequent, where we spend our money, we all have that power, yes, to demand that where we go, where we spend our money is safe and clean and healthy in a safe environment. Absolutely. I don't disagree with any of that. What I'm merely saying is at the same time, there's only one Solicitor General in this county. And for a 19-year-old who is charged with a crime, while their life is on hold for 3 years, 6 months, and 3 weeks, while his case is not properly handled by my opponent's office, that is 3 years, 6 months, 3 weeks of opportunity lost, where he can't enter the military, he can't get certain jobs, he might be denied housing, he's turned away from many, many opportunities, and that is the problem. I'm not disagreeing with the issues. I'm saying we need to be focused on our priorities.
Okay, and Mr. Solicitor General, your last rebuttal, 2 minutes.
Yeah, my last rebuttal is pretty compelling. I think everybody needs to listen to the rebuttal. You say there's backlog of cases. You haven't filed an Open Records Act, so how would you know that? Okay, so my opponent has now admitted that she has not filed an Open Records Act, and I never said that she did file one. In order to know there's a backlog, you have to have an actual record. You have to have an actual record. That's twice I said it. So if you haven't filed anything, you don't have actual evidence. And see, this is what I'm talking about, going back to the old guard. She works for Danny Porter. So this is the type of trickery that got Danny Porter. They would say something out there and think you should believe it. Really, we should be ashamed of ourselves if we're not honest with our citizens. So I'm going to ask her, how many cases do we have backlogged right now? And tell the public that, because I'm telling people, I never said she filed Open Records Act, but you could come in tomorrow and file one, and then we can have a nice debate about how many records we have, because you just admitted that you haven't done your homework, ma'am.
All right, we're
Okay.
going.
I think, we are going back and forth with different allegations. So let's do this. Let's, if you want to get all these answers and come back, because I'm a little unclear also on what accusations or what or who's saying what. So we want to try to clear this. And the only way to do that is possibly to move forward, and we'll welcome any information that you both have, and we'll be happy to share it on our platforms.
Yeah, And we're gonna kind of keep to the program, and we're winding to the close. We got some individual questions that's directed individually at each candidate. I'm gonna ask each one to you all now. They're different questions, and then we'll let you all give y'all elevator speeches, and we'll close out our program. So the first one will go to Solicitor General Whiteside. It says, looking back at your first term, would you do anything differently? If so, what? And then what things are you proud of that you've done?
I can't really say I would do anything differently because I've done things that I think you hired me to do. Number one, I took down the Confederate monument. Number two, I didn't prosecute marijuana. Number three, I protected our school board. When they were not protected, I demanded and had a news conference that asked that police be there, that there be metal detectors. Number three, for diversions, when I came into office, a diversion case was $500. It is now zero. Or if you want to pay $50, that's what we say, do you want to pay $50 or do you want to pay zero? Nobody pays the money for diversion cases. When we don't prosecute marijuana, that means people don't get stopped. I don't regret having the first Black police chief in 200 years in Gwinnett County, Travis Jackson. I appointed him. My opponent was with Danny Porter for 3 years. They kept doing marijuana, misdemeanor marijuana cases. The second I have an airplane here right by me, I'm sorry. You can see that airplane there.
It's quite all right. We can hear you. You on mute.
Moving over because some of our people are actually on that aircraft there. But the whole point I'm trying, I don't think it's too much I would have done differently because we had to do that. We had to work with our public. We had to go to the extended stay hotels and make sure people were safe. And when you talk about corporate giants, read and Google Brian Whiteside Walmart. I took on a multi-billion-dollar company and demanded that there be more security because the biggest victim was a Black woman in Walmart. They did not even have cars out there to protect these people. I told Walmart they would protect our Black women and protect our citizens. They added more security, added more guards, and they actually came to court. I can't say there was too much more that I would do because my whole thing is I try to do what I think you as my boss would want me to do. Protect our school board, protect people in extended stay hotels, make sure we have programs where people can come out to an airport and learn about aviation. They can learn about other jobs.
Mr. Solicitor General, thank you. Your time is up.
All right. And for Attorney Bristol, different question. It says, how will your administration be different? What kind of programs will you prioritize?
Thank you for the question. My administration will be different. For one thing, I definitely want to focus on having robust options for those who do find themselves entangled in the criminal justice system. Many people don't understand how many opportunities there really are in the community. And I know people are going to continue to make missteps, but I would love to see an opportunity where those who do find themselves on probation because they've made a mistake will have opportunities to maybe address certain issues. So for instance, someone who's on probation for committing a misdemeanor offense can get paired up with a program where they can maybe learn a trade for free. There are so many opportunities out here where they can get their GED for free, learn a trade for free, get paired off with different employers. We have a workforce shortage really badly right now. And then we have these programs where they're looking for people, they're willing to train people in these trades for free. So people can go to school, they can get their CNA, they can get their welding, they can get all of these different trade skills. I would love to see an office where people are able to get paired off and I would suspend a fine, for instance, in consideration for them doing this program. They're going to be on probation anyways. I want to have a more meaningful, progressive office. where instead of us just holding people accountable, we're holding them accountable in a way that when they're finished paying their debt to society, they're in a better position than when they started. Also, I really want us to focus on these domestic violence cases. Domestic violence cases are truly the only types of cases that are predictable homicides. They're the kind of cases that have generational impacts on our children. And I really want us to shore up our resources. And my office will be focused on ensuring that our investigators, our victim advocates, and our attorneys are well equipped and well trained to handle these nuanced cases from day one.
All right, thank you. All right, so we pretty much at the closing of our program, and we'll give you a minute to get yourselves together, to get your elevator speeches together. Just a friendly reminder, early voting for these primary elections, school board election, the judicial elections. It starts May 2nd. You can go ahead and request your absentee ballot now, and go ahead and submit those, as well as, like I said, prepare for early voting. We do have 2 weekends where you can plan to vote, which is May 7th and May 8th, which is Saturday and Sunday, and then also May 14th and 15th here in Gwinnett County. Please, if you're watching this and you don't live in Gwinnett and you're outside of Gwinnett, check with your county to see what Sundays they are offering voting, because that is optional from county to county. But those Saturdays, it's across the board, statewide. The 7th and the 14th will be statewide Saturdays for early voting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Go to www.mvp.sos.ga.gov to get those find out where your early voting polling locations are, because that will be different from election day voting, which is on May 24th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. And
President
we want to reiterate again, please, 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 there is no Republican opponent in this race. So the Solicitor General's race will be an election. Whomever wins will be our next Solicitor General. Please check with, and Edward mentioned it, mvp.sos.ga.gov. That's mvp.sos.ga.gov. Check your new status. See that during the census, you may be in a new precinct. You may have new people who will be representing you. Again, that status. We hope that this discussion has been lively, has been informative. We have, I'm looking at our time, we're going to give you each 3 minutes for your elevator speech. We're going to make it a little longer because there was a lot that each of you had to say. And we want to make sure you leave a clear, succinct message, because this race is very important. And Lisamarie Bristol, Attorney Lisamarie Bristol, if you would give your closing remarks, we thank you.
Kathy. You want the key?
Okay, Solicitor General Whiteside, we need you
I got
to
him muted. I muted it. Go ahead,
Great.
Attorney.
All right.
I'm off mute.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd just like to thank the Gwinnett NAACP for the opportunity tonight and for hosting this forum. Thank you, President Poole, and thank you, First VP Paul, for this opportunity and for your questions. Again, I'm Lisamarie Bristol, and I am seeking your vote and your support to be your next Gwinnett County Solicitor General. We talked about a lot tonight, and this is a critically important office, and I hope that everyone was listening. I will say I am running on my record. There are some attacks thrown out and some allegations. I'm proud of the work I've done in my community. I'm proud of the service that I've given to the community, and I hope you will check out my website at lisamariebristol.com. I'm proud that I have served as both a public defender and a prosecutor, and that at every stage of my career, I have taken the time and the effort to try and do what is right, not always what is easy, and that I've always stood for justice, and that I've always tried my very best to ensure that I'm not doing any further harm to anybody who comes before me. I'm proud of the results that I've been able to bring. And with that, I take this as a job application. And with that, I like to switch it and think of this as a job review for my opponent. And when you think about, I'd ask that he be muted, please. And when you think about the first term and the actual results that my opponent has brought up, we've heard a lot about press releases and letters being sent and threats being lobbied and things of that nature, but no real results, no tangible things besides self-proclamations. So no actual things, news conferences and press releases and demands being made are not results. So what I will leave you with is something actual, tangible. All of my actions were improper, irresponsible, and not authorized by law. This apology is extended to not only you, but the entire Gwinnett State Court bench, as my actions obstructed the administration of justice and order, not just to your division, but all the Gwinnett State Courts. That is a letter signed by your Solicitor General this year in his criminal contempt hearing, where he entered a guilty plea to criminal contempt of court. That is a letter signed in the record where he entered that apology before all 6 state court judges, and that is part of public record, in lieu of 3 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. Those are his words and his signature, and it's public record. That's a problem. That shows a full breakdown in his ability to lead, a breakdown in his ability to lead his office, and that is part of a dispute that went on for 75 days. We deserve better.
All right. Solicitor General Brian Whiteside, you got 3 minutes to tell the people why they should continue to support you as Solicitor General.
All right, I will address that last statement. First of all, once again, this shows a lack of knowledge of the law. I did not do any type of plea. It was a civil case, and that was for contempt for protecting our citizens from COVID. There's no such plea. A plea is a criminal event. Come to Gwinnett County, go to the clerk's office, pull that case. It will show that is a civil hearing. As my opponent said before, that we have a backlog. She has a lack of knowledge of the law. First, she's saying that's a criminal plea. It was not. That was in regard to COVID. There's a transcript that actually shows the judge saying that this is a first-time impression. We need to work and maybe communicate. And what we did was protect against a super spreader. There were going to be 75 defendants there, plus attorneys, 150 people plus witnesses, almost 350 people without any masks. But second, when we talk about results, the school board now has metal detectors. Waste Pro is picking up the garbage. We don't have a Confederate monument. For the first time in history, we have a black police chief. And extended stay hotels, Google Brian Whiteside extended stay hotels. They are treating people better. Each and everything we've done, we've won. We won the lawsuit against the judges. We won the lawsuit against Danny Porter, her boss, who took $100,000 from victims. We've won every case we've had. We won a lawsuit to move the Confederate monument, and we protect our citizens. We've lowered crime in Gwinnett County. But even more than that, we've given more opportunities. I'm at the airport right now, and those are opportunities for young people here. So when we talk about evidence, show up tomorrow. We'll have the open records of forms. Anybody want to come, file the Open Records Act, and you can see. And what's even more compelling, my opponent says that we have a backlog of cases, but she just admitted she doesn't have any actual evidence. Maya Angelou said, when a person shows you who they are, believe them. She didn't do anything for 3 years with Danny Porter. She still hasn't made a statement to protect the school board, hasn't showed support to move the Confederate monument, and then they convicted people for misdemeanor marijuana. She's a throwback to Danny Porter. A vote for her is a vote for Danny Porter. I've done my job. I think you should be happy with me. And if you go out to get your garbage, you get an empty garbage can. That's what we do. But you get a full heart and you don't get COVID when Brian Whiteside stands up for you. I will not let you be infected. I will not let you be a victim. And I will not have someone not take a record of your DUI case. Yes, I fight for you because you are my boss. Thank you so much.
Again, we thank both of you for being candid, speaking your mind, speaking your voice today. Again, we will be happy to post any information regarding both of your campaigns, since there was so many, there was so much information that was not clear. We will make an exception for the Solicitor General's race. Edward, are there any other comments?
We did have a comment from Tanisha who says, Brian Whiteside was the only one helping to protect the school board members when no one else cared. Brian cared, and I appreciate him for that. That was one of the comments there. And that's it. No additional questions from anyone in the chat.
And I think we had a comment from Tiffany Janelle Brooke. How important it is.
Yeah, they already.
Did that? Okay, because
yeah,
I'm looking, because I know we had some comments on her side, so we want to be fair on all of these. So, okay. Yeah, we want to make sure that we're representing both thoughts of views. Okay, thank you for that. At this point, we at the Gwinnett NAACP, this has been a long session. I know that Edward had a event this past Saturday on SB 202. Hope that many of you tune into that. Check it out. See if you need any additional information. We're here to inform, educate, and help our community in understanding our new way of life with all the changes that have been made by the Republican Party on stopping our vote, stopping us from getting our voice out, in all the changes that has limited our access. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Please feel free to email us at secretary@naacpgwinnett.org. That's secretary@naac.org. We want to, again, our announcements. Our youth unit has initiated. They are up, running. Give us a call. Give us an email if you have any information about our new youth leadership under Alexandria Chirac and our new youth president, Victoria Chirac, as well as we will be doing many GOTV, Get Out the Vote events now up until the election for 2022, as well as Juneteenth. We will be having Juneteenth with the city of Norcross. Please go to our site, and if you would register, the city of Norcross is having free vending for anyone who is wanting to attend. That's free vending at Juneteenth 2022. We are looking for Afrocentric vendors supplying food. Please give us a call at 404 at 678-400-2929. That's 678-400-2929.
And before we continue,
secretary@naacpgwinnett.org. Yes,
yeah. And before we continue, I'm gonna go ahead and dismiss our guests. Again, thank you, current incumbent Solicitor General Brian Whiteside for coming on, and Attorney Lisamarie Bristol. Best of luck to both of you and y'all run for Solicitor General. Y'all, thank you all for coming on to the program. I'm gonna let you all go, and then we'll finish closing out our program. Go ahead, President Poole.
Okay, well, I guess they were just getting some extra airtime, so that's a good thing too. Again, and very important message about COVID. During COVID, it's not over. The numbers are going up in Gwinnett. The numbers are going up nationally. Please keep your family safe. Please keep your family safe as COVID has not left us. Please, we will be posting information on our site. So you can check with our Department of Health here in Gwinnett. Give them a call. Let them know that you want to see COVID information posted so that you and your family can be safe. I think there was a request by our school board member chair, or our committee chair for our school board is John Cox. And he noted that everybody can start donating to our NAACP youth group as well as us. I'm going to step back. Edward, I know you have some last remarks, announcements, and I'll come back with prayer to close us
out. The only closing remarks is please come join us again here next Sunday. We will have the two candidates running for state Supreme Court on at 5 o'clock next Sunday, which is May 1st. May 2nd, we would have a program which will cover the Congressional District 7, which is currently held by incumbent Carolyn Bordeaux. And running against her is State Representative Donna McLeod, who has been invited and has accepted. We're still waiting to hear whether current Congresswoman Lucy McBath will be on the program, but so far we have gotten acceptance to come on from Carolyn's Bordeaux team and also State Representative Donna McLeod.
And when is that program again for the 7th Congressional District?
That program will be Monday night, May 2nd at 7 p.m.
Monday night, May 2nd. That's the usual. It's out of our path. Please put that on your schedule. We will have the Congressional Forum. Right now we have Congresswoman Carolyn Bordeaux being affirmative, and one of her opponents, State Representative Donna McLeod, who both have confirmed May 2nd. We're waiting to hear from the other candidate who has not responded yet to the Gwinnett NAACP. Is that the last of our announcements?
Yeah, that's the last. Also, that will be streaming on the Gwinnett NAACP and also Galileo. That program will be a dual program with Galileo, which is the Hispanic organization here in Georgia. Well, I think they're nationwide, really. So they will partner with us streaming that program on their Facebook as well as YouTube and Twitter pages. But it also be streamed by yours truly on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter page, and that's on Congressional District 7 here in Gwinnett County for that House of Representatives seats at the federal level.
Okay, thank you everyone who contributed to this program, our Legal Redress Committee with questions. Again, Edward Paul, our first Vice President, we want to thank you for all of your hard work and your team, our communications teams with flyers, as well as our Secretary, Adrian Johnson, who works tirelessly interfacing with these candidates and getting everyone on the same page. We, again, the Gwinnett NAACP, we just thank our beloved community out here in Gwinnett County, Georgia. We're asking those questions that others do not want to ask, and we're finding you answers, bringing on these candidates that you want to see. Again, you have a great evening. Please be safe. Your children in school, you at work, in public places. COVID has not gone. At this time, we would like to close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to come before our community. We come with thanksgiving and praise for all that you have done for Gwinnett NAACP. We thank you for this opportunity to bring these messages to our community. Right now, we ask that you cover all who are running. Lord, help us to choose those who will help us lead, those who will help us protect, those who are here for the good of the people. We just pray this prayer in our name, in the name of Jesus, my God, but we also lift up your God. Amen and amen. And Edward, we forgot to announce our new state president.
Yes. So congratulations to Attorney Griggs on winning the state president, Georgia state president of the Georgia NAACP. He is the current first vice president of the Atlanta chapter and now serves as our state president. Congratulations to Richard Rose, president of Atlanta NAACP, who is now serving as the treasurer, and to all those other candidates that are missing. Sorry I don't have y'all list of names and the positions you all won, but congratulations to you all for winning your respective positions. We are hoping that with the elevation of Attorney Griggs to state president, that he will continue to lead our chapters into a bigger and brighter future. He's done a great job with the Atlanta NAACP, and I have no doubt that we're expecting great things for him at the state level, serving as now the state president of the Georgia NAACP. So congratulations to him. You all have a great night. I'm going to close out our program since my daughter's trying to be part of this program right now. So you all have a great night. Join us back here at 5 o'clock. That's going to be on next Sunday, May 1st, as we will have the cover the Georgia State Supreme Court race. Y'all have a good night.